Hello and welcome to Brand X Reviews. Today we're going to be talking about the Highlander franchise, and on this one we also have a guest, the Core.
There can be only Core.
Exactly. So I did a series of videos back in 2013 when the channel got started, and I did a bit of a retrospective of the movies, the TV show, the music, covered quite a bit of stuff. There's not been anything come out since, but there's been some like re-releases of like home videos and stuff. I can do separate videos talking about this. So for this one, we're just going to talk again, obviously with yourself on here, about the franchise in general. So we'll talk about it in chronological order. But overall, it's a film franchise we've been following since we were kids, really. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I can remember like seeing the videos, like the video store when that used to be a thing.
Yeah,
because they were quite like noticeable covers and stuff, as I recall.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. I mean, me and you would have been like 5 when that first film came out, and it was quite a well-liked one and successful one on videotape, even though it didn't do very well at the cinema. I think some blame that on bad promotion. Like if you look at the movie's poster, it doesn't really tell you much of what the film is about, visually or in words. But when it came out on videotape, it had a lot of good positive word of mouth. It picked up, so that was kind of how we would have seen it. And I know my mother had it on videotape, so that's how I saw it. But I remember being a fan of it to the degree that when the second one came out, when was that, like 1990 or something? I remember knowing I'd either seen bits of the first film, but I was aware of what it was because I remember seeing the second one coming out in a trailer for it and thinking, "Oh, that's interesting." So the first film I would definitely put in my top 10. I do kind of have a list. I think I have like a list of my top 20. Top 10 is kind of difficult, but I can put, because there's so many like films that I like absolutely love. I could kind of narrow it down to like my top 20, I suppose. But yeah, Highlander would be up there, definitely. What about yourself?
Yes.
So yeah, well,
yeah, like I say, I mean, like you, I'm not sure where I'd put it on my like favorite all-time films, but yeah, it's definitely up there.
Yeah. So
it was just such like an interesting concept and like a world that they built. It's just unfortunate the first film kind of like ended it as well. Like there wasn't really anywhere to go from there without going somewhere really silly.
Which is what we ended up getting. But it's one of those franchises, to me, it's kind of like the James Bond franchise where it doesn't make sense, like certain things in it, like bringing characters back or keeping characters in there. Like having Judi Dench as M in the Pierce Brosnan films, but also the same character, for argument's sake, in the Daniel Craig ones. That doesn't make sense chronologically. That doesn't make sense. But you just kind of don't overthink it. If it's like a great character, it's just great to see him again.
I mean, I'm kind of glad the magic works.
That's where I was going with that, yeah. So having Sean Connery come back, it's just good to see him again because he was such a big part of the first film, even though it wasn't ideal. Like the movie itself wasn't ideal, but he was still the same character. So it was a bit of a mess, that second film. I mean, what is it to say about the first film that hasn't already been said? So we'll get on to the second film. We can always dive back if there's any points we need to make. But the second film, me and you watched that for the first time. For the first time you got to see the director's cut of it. So we watched that quite recently.
The one where they went out of the way to excise any reference to Zeist.
Yeah. So that was one where I think in the mid-90s, the second film got a kind of director's cut called the Renegade cut, I think it was. And this was something in the UK I don't think you could get a hold of, as far as I'm aware. I don't believe there was an official release that I ever got to see anyway. It was something that was kind of known about. It wasn't until DVD came out we had a chance of ever seeing that in the UK. They then did a kind of Star Wars special edition director's cut of it, where they enhanced it even further in the late 90s, early 2000s maybe. They enhanced the special effects and just tidied things up even more. So it's a lot less of a messy film, is the director's cut. But in some ways, it causes more problems than it solves. What was the point you were referencing with that? At least, the timeline. Because they've got rid of Zeiss, they've now said that the Immortals and General Katana isn't just off like in another part of the galaxy on another planet monitoring what's going on in Earth. Instead of these people being from another planet, they're just from like an ancient time in the past. So are there like two timelines running linear because because Katana is clearly monitoring what's going on Earth. So that doesn't really make much sense.
I mean, as a sci-fi concept, it's kind of interesting. Like, you could do some interesting things with that. Because it's like, okay, is this like the far future and everything's gone post-apocalyptic? Is that why they've got this like weird tech, like the hoverboards and stuff? Or is this like the distant, like before like the rise of like established history where like they've got this advanced tech because they've got access to seeing the future, so they've like learned how to make this stuff in the past.
Yeah.
It's like an interesting sci-fi concept, but they don't really go anywhere with it.
Yeah, because
they can't, because the film's like,
Yeah, you could sort of say they've got like a portal, like a portal that they can see through. They can see the future through it in like real time. Maybe like the Deja Vu film with Denzel Washington, but yeah, it doesn't really make much sense. However you chop it up.
That said, I would 100% say if you've got a choice of which film to watch, the Renegade cut is the best of the fucking bunch.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, not by a long shot. It raises a lot of questions that it never answers. Like, but as a general thing, like, it is better than what you got in the theatrical cut.
Yeah. I remember even making a point about this back in 2013 when I did a review of these movies, that the DVD that we got in the UK, I think it came out around about 2001 for Highlander 2, was like so basic. It didn't even have like chapter selection. Like the movie was chopped up into chapters, but like on the main menu you couldn't like jump to it. You'd have to just press play and then just keep skipping forward. It was like they really like were not didn't care about that film even after it had like years after it had been released. But throughout the years with the Highlander movies in the UK anyway, I remember the various video releases. The first Highlander movie, I remember that getting a DVD release in 2001 because I remember I was really excited at the time about it coming out. And over the years since then, it's had various re-releases, but it had a good 4K re-release back in 2020, I think, or 22 maybe, I can't remember now, a few years ago. And it's a very good, as you'd expect from 4K, the format. Not always, you're not always blown away, but this was a good transfer. I think Studio Canal did it. They usually do good transfers. But as for the second movie, the way I own that is the imported DVD. I think it's I can't remember what country it's from now. The import that I've got, but it might be Spanish or something like that. But it plays in the UK, no subtitle issues, no language issues, anything like that. So it's worth getting. You can get it fairly cheap. So if anyone's interested in watching that, you can get hold of it. Highlander 3 retcons the second film, which I'm all for. And it kind of makes sense. You can watch number 1 and number 3. They do kind of make sense. Because you've got the concept where Connor McLeod has won the prize at the end of the first film. And then...
But it was kind of on a technicality.
Yeah. There are some other immortals, but they are sealed inside of a mountain that this sorcerer had kind of collapsed and trapped them in. But then there's a historical excavation that takes place, and these immortals then break out, which then reignites the need for another gathering, because now Connor McLeod is no longer the only one left. Kind of makes sense. It's a bit far-fetched, but then again, it's Highlander, so you forgive it. It's a good enough film. It's not terrible. It's one where There's a lot of fan service in it and so on, and there's a lot of like he has to return to New York and he's wearing the same sort of clothes, so it's like a bit of a retread of the first film, but in a good way. It's very kind of a mid-90s kind of action film in that it borrows a lot of tropes. Like the end of the movie does look a lot like the end of Terminator 2 in like a steel foundry. They were definitely kind of copying off certain things that have been done in other movies. But
I guess if you really wanted to watch them, you could kind of watch 1, 3, then like 2, kind of like the Renegade cut of 2. Like, it doesn't really make sense, but you could kind of do that.
Yeah, I've never done that, but you're right, you could, because then you could just say that number two kind of picks up after the third one. I mean, the movies, they have their own contradictions anyway, but if you're going to watch them and you're wanting to watch them in timeline, like story timeline mode, then that you could do that. But those are the Connor McLeod movies that are solely his. That's not the only times we ever got to see him, though, because in 1992, so this is 2 years before Highlander 3 came out, we had the series, the TV series with Adrian Paul, which, again, me, you, I remember Buff, who might be watching this, and a lot of people our age were really big fans of, and we were lucky that Channel 3 in the UK showed quite a lot of them. So, and you could get them on videotape, or you could buy them as well, certain episodes. So that was something we got to enjoy originally when it was back on. It wasn't just something that was like out there that people knew about but nobody got to see. We got to enjoy it originally. And it was really good.
Well, I'd say it did tie in because you had like Connor McLeod in the first one.
Yeah. He's in the pilot episode and he just feels like he is the character from the movies. It's not particularly watered down or anything. It's very much a 90s TV show, but on the sort of good end of that. Because a lot of shows in the 90s that were kind of cheesy, and this was one of them, but in a good way and an entertaining way. And it's not a series. I've not seen every episode. I need to remedy this. I do have them. I got an import of them. In fact, you can actually see it over my shoulder. I've had that on my shelf for a long time. I've seen like quite a lot of episodes like close together. Maybe I haven't seen the last series, but no, it was really good. I remember a lot of the characters and stuff. I mean, you haven't watched this series for a long time, and I haven't. But we were talking about this yesterday, and we can remember like the storylines like very well. But Adrian Paul was...
and then... Oh, sorry.
I was going to say Adrian Paul was very good in the part as well. You could tell he really like enjoyed playing the character, and he was just like a fun character to watch as well. He's a really cool guy. Any thoughts?
Yeah, the general premise of it is like they're the same like clan, the McLeods, just like Connor's like a good like decades or even a century kind of difference between them or something.
Yeah, I think he's close to a century because I think he was born in like the early 1500s, whereas Duncan MacLeod was born in the early 1600s, I think, something like that. But yeah, they were, what he says in the pilot episode, same clan, different vintage. And there were a lot of other good characters in the series as well throughout it. I mean, you had, like, in the first series, you had Richie Ryan. Pretty sad he committed suicide a few years ago, that actor. But also there was Tessa, that was MacLeod's girlfriend. She was like a pretty good actress, pretty good character. She got killed off at some point, I think the second series. Well, I seem to remember sort of brought her back, but it wasn't really her, I seem to remember. That's what I mean, I like scattered memories of the TV show over the years. But then you had the Watchers that were introduced in Series 2. So you had like Professor Dawson, was it? And the character Mythos, who was like a really old immortal. Like ridiculously old. And so there's a lot of good stuff happening in the series. So inevitably the series kind of span off its own movie in 2000, Highlander Endgame, and it crossed over with particularly the first film. So you had Connor McLeod and Duncan MacLeod in the movie together. And part of me thinks it felt more like a TV series, like sequel than a sequel to the Connor McLeod ones. But there was plenty in there to tie it to that first film, bringing like certain actors back and even like sets and stuff from the first film. So I think it was an even split. If you're a fan of the movies or the TV series, I think this gave you a good balance.
It was kind of the point where, like, the first three films you can sort of, like, I don't think I necessarily would. I think I'd just count one and three myself, but you could sort of count, at the very least, the Renegade cut, maybe, of, like, 2 in there as well. Yeah. Endgame, no, this, like, without getting into spoilers, it cannot physically exist in the same continuity as the other films. It's absolutely impossible.
Yeah. Well, we can get into spoilers because these things have been out for long enough. I'm just going to turn this off and we'll just come back in part 2 because I'm limited on how much I can put into one video. So 1 second. Yeah, that was the core saying goodbye for now. I'll do both videos.
With a stroke of the head and a fall of a sword. Wait, no, I've got that wrong somehow.
Yeah, you've just been random now. Right, we'll end the video here and we'll come back in part 2, which will be available at the time when you're watching this. So apologies, I'm having to chop this into 2 videos, but if you check on the channel, the part 2 is available now.